In medieval Europe, not only were the streets filled with human waste, but their culinary habits were equally bizarre. At a feast from that era, you might have found mummies on the table alongside steak and bread covered in bird droppings, as well as pastries crawling with maggots. The scarcity of mummies today can be traced back to Europeans consuming them entirely. Medieval medical texts claimed mummies could cure a range of ailments from tumors and gout to the plague and even syphilis. Mummies were fried into steaks, ground into powder, used as seasoning for bread and wine, and even made into paint, mummy brown, leaving their mark on numerous famous paintings. Europeans dined on mummies from the 12th to the 20th century, spurred by a misunderstanding related to the medicinal pitch, leading to a craze for eating mummies that lasted until they began making mummies out of Europeans themselves. Not stopping at consuming human remains, medieval Europeans also ate maggots. Italian bakers would leave bread outside to attract flies to lay eggs. When the eggs hatched into maggots, the bread would ferment, making a protein-rich meal. Nobles, always seeking to distinguish their dining habits, invented elaborate meals like hollowing out baked bread and
no one has actually sat down and studied the European. No one has gone into looking at the European from an anthropological standard, how they really are, where they really came from. What is the nature of this person? What is the nature of this tribe, this clan, this family? So what I'm going to do is give you a background into nutritional causes of what we call today racism. Now, the Europeans came from somewhere, first of all. They claim they walked from Asia all the way up to Europe, and they established their civilization in Europe. They took a 4,000-mile walk from Asia up to Europe. That is their claim. And they claim their race is from 3 Sanskrit words. That is their claim. But the only thing we have historically to document them is what the facts are. There are a lot of people who claim that they were made and created in a laboratory, the Europeans. There are a lot of people who claim they are a degenerate black person, someone who suffers from a melanin deficiency. That is true. But the facts are they came from somewhere. So we can look at where they came from and what caused them to behave the way they behave, strictly as a science, like you look at any other animal. There are human beings that behave like animals, and then there are animals that behave like human beings. So we're going to look at some animals that behave like human beings. Now, according to, let me go to the chalkboard for a minute. Now, we're going back to maybe 1.5 million years ago. And during that period of time, they had what they call the Ice Age. And that was about 1.5 million years ago.
Can I have your attention, please? Workshop done.
I'll let him pause there.
Dealing with abusive relationships. Room 102. The challenges of international, interracial relationships is in room.
Yes, so we know that the Ice Age started, the most recent one started 1.5 million years ago, and it just stopped about 10,000 years ago. That's when it stopped 10,000 years ago. And the ice receded about 5,000 years ago. And the Europeans entered into history 4,000 years ago. This is when they first recorded this race called the Europeans 4,000 years ago. That was recorded on a pallet, on a mace head in Africa when they first met the Europeans. That's 4,000 years ago. So this is when they entered history. And of course, they entered history violently. And we say they were violent people. Well, they came from the Ice Age. Now, we're in Europe. We're around France, Germany, Sweden, Slavic countries. Those areas are known as glaciated. Glaciated soil. When the ice melts, the ice floods the area, and when it floods, it washes away all the vital nutrients. This is what happens.